Hi, this is Wes Hewitt, and here's the next installment, video 5, for how to create a SysML sequence diagram with Cameo. Okay, so here's the homework that's assigned this week, which includes a sequence diagram, SysML style, and also included is the subsystem matrix and the interface matrix. And these other two assignments can also aid you in creating this sequence diagram. So, here's the use case that we did before, and last time we did play with toys. It was an activity diagram associated with this particular use case, and this is sort of what it looked like. Very similar, where the child interfaces with the toy itself and the projector, but the whole system here is just one swim lane. Okay, so we're going to go deeper with the sequence diagram. So we're going to have multiple systems here, up to 5, and we're going to have an external type system, and we're also going to add the child actor over here. So you'll actually have 7 different lifelines on this one. So again, just to refresh yourself, here's the kind of operators. We're going to focus on just a simple sequence diagram here with the lifelines here, or participants, and we won't go into these alts or the loops or any other options or any sub diagrams. We're just kind of keep it simple this time, but we will focus on the lifelines and the messages going back and forth and the sequence here. So here's your subsystem matrix, showing you, now you're looking at, let's say, the toy or the catapult, and there's these 5 systems, and also you've allocated the requirements to those subsystems, okay, and also some of these other features that you have come up with, by using the compound in fragments. So you can add those in. So it does like the locking system here. It's self-secure, the receptacle, and the arm state. So it actually gives you some state information. And there's a thing called a latch and a pivot and all the things, which is a lot more detailed than what we probably need, but it gives you an idea what it's supposed to do for each one of these systems. So another thing you can look at, these messages are very similar to here in the IDEF, where you have these messages, information being passed from one function to the other. So the sequence diagram is also going to address these kinds of messages, maybe that you would document in your interface matrix. Okay, so and the next thing you're going to be talking about this week and next week is the ODT, operations description template. So here, where you have your toy, your system here, with the subsystems laid out, at least 5, and the child operator or adult or whoever you want, and then this external item over here showing you where the requirements are and adding those other items you can add in here. So and then there's the energy transfers. So the energy transfers are going to be very similar to what you're going to see in this message in the context or sequence diagram. Okay, so here's the diagram that I'm going to do here, showing you the child, Mary, and these particular subsystems, and then the projectile. Okay, so let's take a look at that. And just one second. Okay, so I've opened up Cameo, and I opened up my model that I started last time, SysML model, and where I'd created my use case diagram here, and here's the use case that I created. And then this little fork here means that if you double click on that, you would see this kind of a diagram of the activity. And that link is automatically there because I actually created this activity underneath the use case. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. We're going to create it from a block. So the first thing, because you need those subsystem parts, so you should create a high level. Some of you already have your context diagram, and create a block description diagram, a BDD, showing your, let's say here, this is my domain for my toy. So here's my a toy, and here's all the things in my particular domain. Okay. And if I double click on this, I can see uh, my context diagram basically at the domain level. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to create another BDD of just the toy. Okay. And this is going to look sort of like this here. Let me kind of zoom in a little bit. And where I create a new, now what I did here is I went and created over here in the browser up where it says containment. Okay, I've got a behavior folder, and I created a new structure folder here. Okay, and then all my containment information for my is in here with the blocks for the containment diagram. And then I took the toy block. See, this is the model toy. So here's the catapult. That's that diagram. So I took this block, and I did a right click, and I said create here, and I said create in a block definition diagram. Okay, and that created this. Okay, and then from that, what I did, I got a blank screen, and I just dragged the toy block here. Okay, and if you click on the toy, you can go to this arrow here, the direct composition, and you can just bring it down and create another sub block. Okay, just like these. See, it even has the little bumps there, and you can give it a name. So that's how I created. These are my 5 subsystems. I'm going to hit the undo key, and that takes that away. Okay, and here's another little hint about creating things. So this black diamond means it's a part. This is a composition, similar, and it actually gives it a part name, kind of an instance name here. So energy store is one, project launcher, trigger subsystem, etc. Okay, and so that's the basic subsystems that I'm going to use. So now once I create those, now I can start creating this diagram, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, after you, so once you create this diagram, the BDD, if you notice over here under toy, okay, here you should see these blocks here: energy store and locking, projectile containment, and things. Okay, and here's the toy. Okay, so I created these blocks just on here on the diagram. Okay, now what I'm going to do, what I did is I did a on the toy, where it says since I created these parts, and I'll do this again. I'll go find the toy here. So you notice this already has a bunch of stuff under it. But I do a right click and I say create a new diagram. And then this was where you click sequence diagram. And then it asks you, oh, do you want to include, since I created that block diagram, it's asking, do you want to include these parts in my sequence diagram? And you say, okay. So it automatically creates these 5. Okay. So now all you have to do is I go up to, I want to add the child, and I already created the child already, and it's up here in my behavior, and I'm just going to drag the child onto the diagram like that. And so this is like a class name, and I'm going to give a specific name. I'm going to call her Mary, is the child. And these all have pretty long names because it says basket. It's got a short name and a long name. So you can actually right click that and just to save real estate, you can go here to System Properties, just right-click on the thing, and come down here where it says Show Classifier, and turn that off. And so now you just see basket. Okay, and I think you have to turn that off. Now I can do this for more than one just by holding the Shift key, right-clicking, Symbol Properties, Show Classifier. Okay, so I'm not seeing both names. I'm going to change the name on this one. I'm just going to call this the Rock. That's my, oh, I didn't add my projectile. Never mind, forget that. So I'll do the same here, right click, and I'll go to Symbol Properties. I'll turn that off. Notice it automatically goes off. Okay, now let's go add the rock, the projectile. That's the other external thing which wasn't on that diagram. So I'll go find the projectile, which is a block in my context diagram. So here's projectile. And before I drag it over, I guess I'm going to go with where I want to put it is right there at the end. So my projectile is what I'm shooting external. Okay, dropped it down there. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to type rock. So that's the instance of what I'm going to throw in this particular sequence diagram. Okay. Now another thing I like to do, and this is just kind of style, I'm going to add a separator, a vertical separator over here between the rock and the system, just to say, so you can see where the system boundary is. Okay. I think that's a good technique, just like we do in the other diagrams. Okay, that shows up like that. Okay, so what's the next thing we should do? You could do the same thing here. Let's do that. We'll set up another vertical separator. Click. Boop. Okay, so again, the child, Mary, is separated. Let's see, if you hold the control key and the scroll, you can zoom out or zoom in a little bit. Now you notice too at the top here, you notice how it's add these tabs? I think that's just to make it easier for you to read, because you notice it is a little bit smaller. So that's a feature. That's not a SysML thing. So, okay, so let's start creating our messages. So the first message I'm going to do, I'm just going to come down here and grab a basic message, click on that, and it's going to be from Mary over to the energy storage. You could come over to the launcher, depending on what she's going to grab. Okay, let's say you go over to the launcher and you can write text on here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit farther so you can see this, because that's a little too small for me to see. So okay, so it says number 1, and I'm gonna say child pushes down the launcher. Okay, so that's like setting it up. Okay. Okay, so what's the next step? After she does that, there's going to be some energy transferred. So I'm going to say I'm going to send another message now from this thing over to, let's say, the energy. Let me escape here. Okay, so I got the basket here. These are a little bit different where they were before, but okay, so here's energy storage. Okay, so I want a message to come from here to energy storage, because she's pushing down the thing and it's storing energy, right? So 2 is going to be energize launcher. How's that? Okay. Okay, so I could actually do one of these message to self. Just click on there, and I'm going to say store energy. So that's kind of like its function, it's doing. And then at some point, let's see, after it stores that, we're going to send a message here to maybe to the lock. Okay. And it's going to lock system, let's say. Okay. And now, so what other systems do we have here? Let's see. So the next message might go to, so here's the trigger system. I'm going to change this name to just trigger. So I'm going to try to use all these systems, how they're being used. Okay. So this is going to be trigger, let's say set, and it's armed. Okay, so I'm going to emphasize that that's a state change. Okay. And if you misspell something, you can always go back and edit it. Okay. Okay, so once the trigger set, I guess what I'm going to do is now there's going to be basically some kind of a message coming back from the trigger back to our child. Okay. Need to kind of scroll over a little more here. Okay. So now ready. So, okay, we're going to pause for a second. Okay, the next step, we're going to put a rock into the basket. So we're going to send a message. Mary is going to put a rock in the basket. So she has to go get the rock and then load it. Okay, so let me go here. So it's going to go from Mary all the way to the rock. I'm going to zoom out just a tad, just so I can see it. Okay. This is where you may want to make some of these just a little bit smaller. You notice it keeps it all in the line for you. That's kind of all at the same level. Launcher. Okay. So we're always going to be looking ways to save real estate here. Okay, here's my lock. Here's my energy source. Here's my line. Okay, that makes it a little easier. So I'm going to go for a message from Mary all the way out to the rock. Now you notice, okay, so get rock. You also can move these up a little bit. You can grab the line and kind of wiggle them up if it's you find there's a lot of gaps. Okay. Okay, so once, what happens to the rock next? Okay, so message, we're going to go through a rock, and I believe it's going to go into the basket, the holder, the receptacle. Okay, so this is load rock. Get rock, load rock. So rock is now in the basket. So not only are you armed, but you're loaded. Okay, so after going to the basket, let's see. So the sub action here you could put in is that this thing is, oops, put the wrong one. Is to hold rock. So that's a function the basket is going to do. Okay, so after we hold the rock, now the rock is ready to go. So from the basket, that's going to go back to the launcher. Okay, so the launcher is now rock secured. Okay, so imagine that's a message coming back between two systems. Okay, and then once it's back in there, now I'll send another message back from the launcher back to the child. She's been waiting patiently to say that the launcher is armed and loaded. Okay, so Mary is happy. Let's see. Okay, so what's the next thing Mary's going to do? She's going to ready, aim, shoot. So she's going to, let's see, we're going to have a message here. And it's going to go to the trigger block. Here's the trigger. Okay, so this is going to be trigger release. Okay, I think I inserted a couple here. So trigger release is going to go to the trigger, then a message is going to go to unlock the launcher. So next we're going to go to the lock, which is holding that. It's a separate thing. Okay, so this is going to go not to the launcher, but it's going to go to the lock because it was locked. And now it's going to unlock. So the command to unlock is going to the locking device. Okay, so the next message now is going to go from the lock to the, let's see, I would send it all the way to the energy source. Okay, so locking is going to release it, and the energy source now is going to release energy, throw rock. To the energy source. Okay. So let's see, energy source, release energy. Okay, so the next message here is going to go from the energy all the way to the projectile. Okay. So this last one is rock away. The rock is gone. And I'm going to say that's the end of the sequence. Now the only thing I didn't put on here was what the triggering event, as David called. So where that little black dot was to start, that's what this is right here. This is Mary initiating it. So before we didn't know what was initiating. Now by adding Mary in here, we can see who is starting it. And once the rock's gone, Mary's going to observe it, but that's not really a message coming back. Maybe that's another use case for her to determine if that was a good shot or not. So, okay, so I think that's covered all the steps. The 5, you got Mary, you got everything here. So, okay, we'll cover more stuff in the future as needed. And if you want more detail on doing sequence diagrams, you can take the SysML class next semester. Okay, talk to you all later.